There is one thing you need to understand about the NBA in the 1980s. It wasn't just about talent, it was about intimidation, mind games, and survival. And in this war, there was a man who didn't have the muscles of Wilt Chamberlain, couldn't jump like Michael Jordan, and wasn't as fast as Magic Johnson. But when this pale, lanky kid from Indiana stepped onto the hardwood, something strange happened. Even some of the league's toughest enforcers, men who hated guarding him, started breaking out in a cold sweat. They called him the Hick from French lick. But behind that face was the most vicious, arrogant, and mentally destructive monster to ever lace up a pair of sneakers. Today, the legends who bled against him tell the truth.
So Larry Bird came over there and looked at our bench, and he said, three-pointer from right over here. Hell, everybody looked down at the floor. They hit the three.
Oh! Can you believe that?
We are answering the ultimate question. How did a man who looked like a high school math teacher turn the entire NBA into a house of mirrors and pure terror?
They're gonna get frantic defense. Bird.
Magic Johnson said Bird was the player he respected most. That's coming from the man who led the Lakers to 5 championships. Why? Because Bird didn't just want to beat you. He wanted to take your soul.
Steal behind the back to Nate Archibald. Back to Bird.
All right, fantastic.
He wanted you to go home, look at your family, and wonder why you ever picked up a basketball in the first place. We are talking about a man who scored 60 points against the Hawks and had their own bench cheering for him out of pure disbelief.
Shoots it good. Bird have had great games against each other this year.
A man who walked into the All-Star locker room and asked, "Which one of you losers is coming in second?" But the real story is darker. There were moments when Bird was so bored by his own greatness that he started playing games within the game that bordered on insanity. This is how Larry Bird became one of the most feared players in basketball history. To understand the monster, you have to go to where it was forged. French Lick, Indiana, a town of less than 2,000 people, nothing but cornfields and hoops. Larry Bird wasn't a product of a system. He was a lone wolf.
For the Bob. Got it again.
While other kids were at parties, Larry was shooting hundreds of free throws every single morning before school. When he entered the NBA in 1979, the experts laughed. They saw this 6'9" player with thin legs and a strange jumper and said, "He's too slow. He will be eaten alive in the paint. NBA athletes will run circles around him." Even the Celtics weren't sure if they should bet their entire franchise on this country boy. Think about the arrogance of those scouts. They thought basketball was just about vertical leap and 40-yard dash times. They missed the most important part. Larry Bird's brain operated at the speed of a supercomputer, while the rest of the league was using an abacus.
Look at this crowd. They've seen so many great plays, but they still appreciate number 33.
He was a master of geometry. He knew where the ball would land before it even hit the rim. The doubt was just gasoline for a fire that would burn the NBA down for the next decade. They called him slow, but he was always 2 steps ahead, mentally and physically. The moment the NBA realized Larry Bird wasn't human wasn't because of a dunk. It was because of his sheer malice. This was the birth of the trash talk king.
On the floor, we're down to 6. Bird in the corner, double fake, jumper, it's good!
There is a famous story about Xavier McDaniel, one of the toughest defenders of his era. Bird looked him dead in the eye and said, "I am going to get the ball right here. I am going to take 1 step left, and I am going to shoot it right in your face." And guess what happened? Bird got the ball, he took the step, he shot, and after the ball ripped through the net, he looked at McDaniel with a straight face and said, "Damn, I didn't mean to leave 2 seconds on the clock." Boom. That's not basketball. That is a psychological execution. In that moment, the league realized you are not playing against a man. You are playing against a fate he has already written for you. Or look at the legendary left-handed game in 1986. The story goes that Bird was so bored with the competition that he decided to finish nearly every shot inside the paint using only his left hand, despite being right-handed. He finished with an extraordinary performance, and after the game, he said, "I was saving my right hand for the Lakers." That isn't confidence. That is a psychotic level of dominance. Between 1984 and 1986, Larry Bird was the undisputed god of basketball. 3 straight Most Valuable Player awards. In this stretch, he was invincible. He was a great white shark in a pool of goldfish. His statistics were absurd, but what made him a monster was his efficiency. He never wasted a movement. Every pass was a surgical strike. If you played the Celtics in that era, you knew you were spending 48 minutes in hell. Bird was everywhere. The best rebounder, the best passer, and the deadliest shooter on the floor.
Larry Bird, off he goes. Give it right back to Bird for the cramp.
Opposing coaches were hopeless. Chuck Daly of the Bad Boy Pistons once said, "We tried everything. We doubled him. We hit him. We held him. He just laughed at us." Bird loved the pain. He sought out contact. He was a street fighter in a gentleman's jersey. Why did it work tactically? Let's look at the cold, hard facts. Bird had a release point behind his head that was nearly impossible to block without fouling. His footwork was so precise that he could send defenders flying with a single head fake. But his greatest weapon was his court awareness. Larry Bird didn't see the game in 2 dimensions. He saw trajectories, passing angles, and ball rotation in real time. He was one of the first true point forwards. He could ignite the fast break like a guard.
Posted up Bird. Takes the jumper and hits it. Tell you what, they've tuned each other up.
And battle in the post like a center. And then there is the shot. In an era where the three-point shot was an afterthought, Bird used it as a psychological dagger. He was the predator who studied his prey's weaknesses before he ever struck. That is what made him terrifying. You couldn't surprise him. He already knew what you were going to do, before you did. In the end, it wasn't an opponent that defeated Larry Bird. It was his own body. His back injuries turned the monster back into a man who could barely stand. But even in his final games, in agonizing pain, he was still outsmarting the next generation's superstars. His legacy is set in stone. Larry Bird was an important part of the modern NBA. He helped save the game and turned it into an art form. The legends call him a monster because he pushed the limits of what a human being can achieve on a court. He was proof that greatness begins in the mind and is finished in the heart. He was terrifying. He was arrogant. He was a nightmare. But above all, he was one of a kind. Now I want to hear from you. If Larry Bird played in today's NBA, with all that space and no hand checking, how many points would he average? Would he drop 50 points a night, or would he be too slow for the modern pace? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more stories about the most terrifying legends in history, click the video on your screen and do not forget to subscribe. We will see you on the court.